Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today for a very special video chat. I'm Varun Shreer. I'm with Generation UCAN, and I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by Meb Keflezighi. Meb, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Varun. Thanks for having me. Hello, everybody. Wish you guys all the best, and hopefully we can chit-chat and learn a few things about your Generation UCAN.
So the topic of the chat today is fuel like Meb, and we're really going to pick Meb's brain over the next 30 to 45 minutes and understand some of the nutrition secrets and the fueling strategies that have helped Meb get to where he is today. And it's really been a remarkable running career for Meb, who just qualified for his 4th U.S. Olympic team a couple weeks ago at the Olympic Marathon Trials in L.A. at the age of 40. So Meb is just really doing things that, many people didn't think were possible a few years ago. Meb, before we really dive into the fueling and the nutrition and some of the secrets that have helped keep you fit, just tell us about qualifying for your 4th Olympic team. You've had a couple weeks to let it sink in now. Has reality set in? Can you believe it?
Yeah, I definitely can believe it now, but I have to pinch myself sometimes how fortunate I have been, with people that I have run across many decades, from high school to college and past and professionally, and all the sponsors that I have that allow me to be the best that I can be. So I just keep one foot after another and keep plugging away. And I just feel very fortunate to be able to earn my 4th Olympic team that was held about almost 3 weeks ago in LA. And it wasn't an easy task, but you put a goal on yourself, and then there's a lot of people who help you be the best that you can be. And I ran the race, but there's so many, including Generation UCAN, all sponsors and all other people who help me be who I am, and I feel very fortunate. My friend Rich Levy sometimes says, you are who you are because there's so many people help you be the best that you can be. It's not because I have one single goal, but I have so much a deep support system, and my victory is everybody's victory who are invested in me.
It's interesting to hear you say that. I know, just looking at some of the feedback that I've seen on social media, some of the things that people were saying, even when you were kind enough to join us for the event after the Olympic trials, people really do feel like they're sharing in your success. A lot of the fans, and it's kind of like you qualifying for the Olympic team. A lot of people feel like it's a special time for them too. You've done this before. It's the 4th time that you'll be heading to the Olympics to represent the United States. What stands out, or what's different this time around, maybe compared to last time?
Well, thanks for the nice comments that people have shared with me. The Green Bay Packers are the people's team, and I feel like I have that title. So many people kind of invested in me, and and time and energy and finance and all those things. So I feel I'm honored to be able to represent them and our country and the sport that are invested in me. But going to my 4th Olympic team is different. And first time I ever made the Olympic team was 2000. I just graduated from college and excited to represent the United States in the Olympics. And then you want to set a new goals. You want to be able to win a medal for our country, which I done that, and very fortunate to that happened in 2004. And then London was pretty special because my wife and kids and my parents and siblings were there. But now everybody can remember, hopefully, the Rio. This is my last Olympics, and that way is different, just because the girls are talking about it, and some people say, "Oh, the girls gonna go." I said, "Well, the reason I made the Olympic team is for them more so than for me, just because I've been fortunate enough to be on 3 Olympic teams to have the experience, but now hopefully they can have a good experience of that." And anytime you get an opportunity to wear that USA singlet is a great honor, whether it's at the Olympic or World Championship or any time. So we worked very hard to earn that team in LA, and now I'm recovered and hopefully start training for Rio now.
Yeah, Meb, you talked about your girls. Though we saw your 3 daughters in LA after the trials, and if there was any doubt in your mind about whether or not the girls were coming, they were very forthcoming in telling us that they were absolutely going to Rio. So I think they've already made the decision that they will be there. But what a great time for you and your family.
Yeah, thanks. There was just an amazing moment for me to be able to just give them a hug and come, tell them to come and give them a hug when I crossed the finish line. And the last mile and a half, people were saying, "We're going to Rio, going to Rio." So it was really exciting for me, for my family, and many others, people who support me. But my daughter's the oldest, obviously, geography and all that stuff. They see it on map might be, but for the youngest one, you probably come 2 hours and say, hey, this is real. She can't probably believe you. So they just think, let's go to London, like overnight, just you can book it. But there's so many planning and things like that. And Howie and Jordanos have to work hard to make sure the accommodations are set for them to be able to go to Rio.
Well, great, Meb. So now over the next 5 months, the training is going to begin again. You're going to start the journey. And, like I mentioned off the top, today we want to talk a little bit about one aspect of the training, which has been something that you've really, really focused on, always focused on, but perhaps has gained an increased importance for you in recent years, which is your nutrition. And not just your nutrition, on race day, but really your nutrition and training. And your daily nutrition. But let's take it back a little bit. Back around the time you made that first Olympic team in your college days, you came to this country from Eritrea and, really from some difficult circumstances for your family and your parents sacrificed a lot to get you here. When you got to the collegiate level and, kind of were going to the dining halls and saw all this food available to you, how did you approach fueling your body on a daily basis? And can you just maybe touch a little bit kind of on how much of a change that was coming from what you grew up with to getting to the college level and having food kind of be everywhere?
Growing up in Eritrea, we were faced with many obstacles, like you alluded to. My book, Run to Overcome, I talk about all those, but definitely there was war, famine, and drought, and anything you can, you got to go miles to find a bark from the trees, climb to so you can have fire. And that's if you have enough food to cook. And, when you have cooked, you have to measure, you have to say, hey, this is enough for today and then tomorrow and the next day, because you don't know what the future holds. And I remember when I was a kid, just digging down in the dirt and just digging and digging and digging until it came really moisture and eating dirt to survive because of minerals, because your brain tells you to do so. And then obviously, going to Italy, and it was a lot of gelato and a lot of good time and peace and freedom. But my parents wanted a better opportunity to come to the United States. And, wealth in some areas are measured more on how big your tummy is, believe it or not. In Eritrea, if you have a big tummy and you have a car, you made it. It's not even, if I go there and as fit as I am right now, they probably think, you poor guy, you're starving to death. And going to UCLA, I still have that mentality. For me, it was when I went to UCLA, I was just observing and eating as much as I can to make up for the time lost. And, I used to have literally like, eggs, bagels, cereal, and muffin and all that stuff just for breakfast. And lunch, I would come back and have pasta or pizza and maybe even a sandwich. It just, and it was mind-boggling when an exercise physiologist told me, and, write down everything, how much you walk, how much you exercise, and how much you stand up, and then add for 3 days all the food that you intake. And he says, you're lucky you run, you're lucky you have good genetics, otherwise you'd be obese. So that was a wake-up call for me. And obviously I modified my diet extremely to be able to just have one of those things, where there's a bagel and cream cheese, and then go to class and I started making my own, just a sandwich, turkey sandwich and a banana. That was it, versus coming back for a whole meal and all that stuff. So that was a wake-up call for me. And ever since that modification, my running started excelling. So, you have to do what you can in training, in preparation, all those times, months away. It's not just race day. I've always said 90% is physical and 10% mental and training. And then on race day, it switches to 10% physical, healthy and conditioned, and then 10% mental. And, with the Generation UCAN, it's definitely been very helpful for me to be able to just get my routines, immediately. That's the first thing that goes after my body after a workout, especially after a hard run or intervals or tempos. And then obviously I use it to recover, because whether I'm driving 40 miles one way to go to from Bishop to Mammoth back, and then after that I go to the gym, maybe do a little exercise, or I am doing the stretching and the drills. I'm not in a rush to say, okay, well, I need to get food. You just need the packet, and then have 10 ounce of water or 20 ounce of water, and then you could, you'd be able to bounce back. You see longevity of energy for 4 hours or so, 3 to 4 hours. So I'm just very fortunate to be associated with Generation UCAN, and it's been very essential to my succeed since 2009.
And I definitely want to dive a little bit more into that and really talk about the backstory with how you first got involved with UCAN, which is, it's pretty fascinating. But before we get there, so, you know, you were at a point in your career in college where you were able to eat a certain way. And, you know, like everyone, you're young, your metabolism is churning. And for you, especially, you're still training very hard. So everything's kind of in prime condition. Now, was there a certain point that you reached in your career where, you know, of course, as a professional runner, you're going to start to focus on all the little things, but was there even a certain point where you reached in your career or a certain age where you said, hey, I have to dial in this nutrition aspect of things even more if I want to continue to maintain this consistency?
Through trials and errors, you kind of figured out what body weight works for you. Obviously, when I was a freshman at UCLA or so, you know, we always know about the freshman 15 pounds and things like that. So I was probably on that program. And then eventually when I started training seriously, you know, doing the track hours, you can become a little bit leaner and things like that. But at one point, your metabolism will slow down. And it happened to me in probably 2007, 2008. I was really lean, trying to give everything that I can to win the trials in 2008 trials in New York, which was in November of '07. But and after that, definitely 2009, 2010, that was the breaking point for me. I can shed down the weights that I usually, even though I was putting 100 to 120 miles, I have to be measure every day of on the scale. And then even now I still do, because I know what weight works for me, and I try to get there as much as I can through exercise. But also Generation UCAN has been helpful in that regard, being lean. And like you said earlier, 2009, when I won the New York City Marathon, I was making a lot of appearances, and one of my teammates from Mammoth Track Lab is like, how many miles you run? You look so lean. I'm like, well, I'm on this new Generation UCAN diet, and you know, it kind of helped me be, be lean and fat burn and things like that. And then so it made it a lot easier when I started training again.
So, you know, that's fascinating to hear you talk about, because, you know, Meb, I think a lot of people probably look at you and just think like, oh, Meb's training so many miles, like the weight's just going to come off. You know, it's just kind of a natural thing that's going to happen because of the level at which you train at. But I mean, what you just said, you know, especially perhaps starting more in 2008, 2009, it's not that simple for you then, right? It's not just you're training so hard to get ready for a marathon that you just naturally shed the weight. You're really paying attention to a lot of the other factors outside of the training to get to the weight that you want to get to.
Most definitely, Varun. I mean, I have to work very hard and nutritionally, and, you know, a lot of fruits and a lot of snacks, and I have to watch my weight. And some people think just because I run that distance or that many miles, it's automatic lean and whatnot. No, I have to work very hard just like everybody else. And sometimes you have to say, for me, I've been doing it for such a long time, 25, 26 years old, I became too efficient in a way. So for somebody who's running and carrying extra weight or has to work harder, you know, to go 8-minute pace or 10-minute pace or 12-minute pace. But for me, if I don't run in the in the fast ones, if I go 6-minute pace or 6:30, 6:45, I've been doing it for such a long time, I'm not burning that more calories. Whereas somebody else who's huffing and puffing, they're burning more calories than I am, just because we're supposed to technically burn, I think, 1,000 calories a mile. But, you know, for me is I can run a mile, you know, like 10 miles, all I burn is 575 or 600 calories, and that means I can have a banana and a Generation UCAN shake. You know, that's not fair. I did go the distance like everybody else, but I think I really became too efficient in what I do, and it has advantage and disadvantage with that.
So let's break this down into a few kind of different topics and dive into this a little bit further, Meb. So, you know, let's first talk about kind of the times where you're really in heavy training, you know, getting ready for a marathon. What are some kind of general strategies that you try to use in terms of optimizing your calorie intake when you're in that heavy training block? And is there any one or two things that you can look at specifically and say, hey, you know, 6 or 7 years ago, the way I did this was very, very different than the way I'm doing it today?
Nutritionally, definitely what I used to do 6 years ago or 7 years ago is different than what I do now. I mean, right now, to be honest, getting ready for the Olympic trials, you know, I'm 40 and soon to be 41. I just, you know, the proportion meals in the United States is too big. You know, I said, as soon as I go, I cut whether it's burrito or omelet or whatever it is, I cut it in half. okay, I'm gonna have this one and I'm gonna have the other one tomorrow, versus back in the days, 8 years ago or 10 years ago, probably maybe 12, I was like, I can take that and more, and you can get away with it. But now, definitely, the weight's not shed enough as it used to. So I just, maybe have snack. Maybe I have my Generation UCAN immediately, and when I get home, I'll have half an omelet, and then eventually have fruits in between and have a dinner. I'm not starving myself per se, but at the same time, I just have more grace throughout the day versus 2 big meals or 3 big meals. And for those of you people that work, I think it's important to have a Generation UCAN packet and snacks at the office or in your backpack or in your car. So whenever you feel a little bit hungry, whether it's in traffic or dropping off kids and things like that, you can have it immediately. And while you do those kind of things, your energy will be up high. You're also not going to feel hungry when you get home or when you go for exercise. So those are the important. Planning ahead is huge, because if you don't plan ahead, then you're going to get anything and everything that is in front of you, which, that's where I think Generation UCAN and things like that come in handy.
That's a great tip, Meb. So, I think planning ahead, and for a lot of people, like you talked about the example being at work or being on the go, that's the easiest time to kind of have misses when it comes to nutrition. So that's a great tip. So for one thing you do is, of course, always plan ahead, and then having those smaller meals throughout the day. For you specifically, it's helped you be able to maintain your energy and not overeat at certain meal times. Now, one of the big things that's kind of a hot discussion point when it comes to fueling is, the role of carbohydrates for runners versus other nutrients versus protein and fat. And especially for runners looking to stay lean and looking to improve their fitness. There's a lot of talk about reducing your sugar intake as one strategy that'll help get you there. Can you comment on that? Or has your proportions of carbohydrates compared to other nutrients changed at all when you're in that training period? And how about your sugar intake? Is that something that you've tried to tweak or change over the years?
I was born in Eritrea, so there's a lot of tea people. We love to drink tea, and then we drink tea more for the sugar, because sugar is kind of scarce in Eritrea. So, and over the years, though, I definitely have to modify that. Sometimes I went like 6-8 months without, sugar in my tea, and that's a sacrifice that I have to make. And also, when you're eating a meal, you just got to be able to just say proportionally. And, I have to modify as I gotten older, for sure, just because, you are what you put in your body. And if you are careful and you study and things like that, it can help. For me, as I got older, also, I do more protein than I used to do carbohydrate back in the day. So, but, you cannot ignore protein and then just do, carbohydrate and just do protein. So you have to kind of do a little bit of balance, and that balance, that helps you reduce the amount of, the sizes of what you eat. So you want to be able to say, okay, but as you get closer to the race, I do more protein load and then carbohydrate toward the end of the week. So you have to try those in your long runs and weeks out, so you can say, okay, what works for me, and do that whenever you do your first marathon or second or fourth marathon, and experiment those, and then say, what, this works for me. If it's working for you, don't change it, but maybe modify in training a little bit. Maybe I should do a little bit more protein as I'm getting older, and it seems to help for me.
So that's another a great piece of insight from Meb, as talking again, just to recap about as he's gotten older, trying to eliminate some of the added sugars in his daily diet, and then also shifting that nutrient balance to upping the protein and lowering the carbohydrate throughout the training period, and then adding some more carbohydrates the week of the race. So that's great insight, Meb. And what is kind of a typical training day in terms of the, outside of, say, UCAN or the sports nutrition that you would use, in terms of the food that you would eat in a typical training day? Take us through, what a day in the life of Meb might look like.
Well, for me, it's important to start out with tea. And I usually have, whether I'm here in San Diego or Mammoth with the girls, while I get ready with them, I will have a bowl of tea and I have a toast with almond butter and honey, and then have that and then go for my workout. And, depends. If I'm doing a hard run, I'll have Generation UCAN immediately. But if I'm not doing, I'll have a banana until I get home and have a real meal. And on the easy days, and when I come home, I'm a breakfast kind of guy. I love to have an omelet, whether it's with Giordano's or I do it myself when I'm in Mammoth. But protein, recover is all I can do. And I'm not I'm not having the toast or a bagel with it, but proportionally that's huge. Back in the days, it used to be more like turkey sandwich and bread, but now I do go more protein with something warm, and that's one thing that I love eggs, so I like to have that. And then throughout the day, I probably have, maybe if it's an easy run, I'll just have a salad and crave in it, just toss it in there and then crave jerky, crave jerky. And then, throughout I'll have fruits, whether it is, I love bananas or apples or orange, something that's simple that are, and more actually I have been having blueberries. I never had this many blueberries probably since 2010. I'm in the gallons and gallons of it. And then eventually, we'll usually have an early dinner. If it's before a tempo run or long run, we usually like to have a pasta. Otherwise, if it was a hard day, I will have steak or chicken or fish in terms of for dinner. And then obviously, I drink a little bit of milk at night, just if I want to sleep better with a little honey. But that's, sometimes I'll eliminate the honey as I get closer to races, but I still have milk. So those are the things that are important to keep track. But yeah, so on hard days though, I mean, like I said, it's just 3 times, 4 times, maybe in 9 days, I'll use the Generation UCAN immediately. And that, I really believe in recovery, and never. Some people ask me, why did you get exhausted on that workout? You should never feel that way. You should feel always, I could have gone another mile. Because if you do that, you're going to come back stronger the next day. You're going to come back stronger the next week. Whereas, if you go out hard and you're going to ask for trouble, and, you'd rather be healthy and consistent than just go over the top.
I want to dive a little deeper into your recovery routine, but to again summarize, you've been talking about adding more protein, and if we just went through a day of meals for you, just to reemphasize this for folks, we're talking that almond butter on the toast in the morning, which is some protein. We're talking about the eggs for breakfast, or the UCAN with protein after, either one or both of them, which again, you're getting the protein in, the jerky added to your salad, which you're getting the protein in. And then at dinner, when you talked about either the steak or the fish or the chicken, again, protein. So it's really making sure you're getting protein in almost every one of your meals and snacks. It's interesting to hear you go through that and be able to identify that you really are focusing on making sure that's a part of every single meal you have.
Absolutely. I mean, protein is important, and especially as you're getting older, it keeps you leaner, and then it keeps you recovery for the next day and next hour, next afternoon runs, so all those are important. And also, sometimes if you are coming from long trips and things like that on a plane, you always have snacks like Power Bar, have those in there. But I really believe that you are what you put in your system. You got to have a strategy. I mean, I'll have Crave and Generation UCAN and Power Bar in my bags and travel, and I can be sitting there. Don't watch out for the expiration date. But other than that, it's a great way to have, because if you get stranded on an airplane or at the airport terminal and things like that, you don't want to just, you don't want to get some greasy food, and you got to have to rely on healthy nutrition. And I feel comfortable with those, and and as long as you can do those, you're going to be able to do great things, and your body will appreciate it, because it will give you more energy. That's what you want. You want more energy and consistent, sustained energy. But for me, when I'm in training, especially in Mammoth, in terms of recovery, I drive 90 miles both ways, and not one way, both ways. So when I go there, I want to be able to just have a Generation UCAN, and then take my time doing the stretches, take my time to do the stretching and the drills, and then take my time to drive 40 miles. And then maybe I'll have a therapy, or whether I go to the gym. Whereas if you didn't have the Generation UCAN, you immediately want to go to something else that is, oh, I can't wait, start eating mussels instead of the food that you have in there. So you want to be able to be careful. And then for me, it's been very reliable, very great nutrition. And at the same time, just sustain energy for the longest, not in a rush. I used to do the ice bath and things like that. I don't do that anymore, but you'll be able to just give yourself 3 hours, which is a long time, or maybe even 4, pushing it. So as long as you can do that, then you'll be in good hand.
So, one of the things, Meb, I think it's an interesting story, kind of your background with UCAN and how you got started with it. But for folks in the audience who are watching us that aren't so familiar with UCAN, you know, it was with everything that Meb's talking about, one of the really unique aspect of UCAN is the carbohydrate in the product, which we call super starch. So instead of sugar, UCAN uses a starch, and it's a slow and steady burn. So when Meb's talking about sustaining his energy for several hours after a workout, you know, he's using the UCAN product with the added protein in it, but he's still getting the slow and steady burn from the super starch, which is the carbohydrate in UCAN that is keeping his blood sugar steady, that's not giving him the sugar spikes, that's not elevating his insulin levels, and it's allowing him to keep burning fat in that post-workout period. So a lot of what Meb's talking about as he's altered his diet, UCAN from a recovery standpoint fits very well, both in terms of maintaining his energy with fewer calories and also allowing him to continue burning fat in that post-workout period. Now, Meb, you know, when you were first introduced or presented with UCAN, it was at a time where the company didn't even exist. It was in 2009. Take us back to the time where UCAN was you know, presented to you, and what interested you about trying it out?
I mean, it was started obviously with Dr. Krista Austin, who introduced me to the company, and the fascinating story of Jonah, how a rare disease that he had you know, his parents used to wake him up in the middle of the night to feed him, and you know, now with their Generation UCAN, they were finally could sleep throughout the night. So to hear the story of how it started, it didn't start because of me or athletes and things like that. It was more for survival. And the super starch, like you described earlier, it just gives you sustained energy without crashing. And you know, it was 2009. I remember, you know, the packet didn't even have a label on it, but I know it was really good stuff, that it was approved, and I gave it a shot. And you know, the name itself, UCAN, you know, we're in an era where it's the X Factor or X Generation, but this UCAN mentality that when I won the New York City Marathon was huge for me and my family, and I thought it was a great name, the UCAN, Generation UCAN, and ever since I've been able to use it. And you know, it's just like you said, just amazing product that is easy on your stomach, because you can put you put in your system, but some things don't settle very well on your tummy. And Generation UCAN has not given me any problems with it, and I fell in love with it. And thanks to Generation UCAN and Krista for introducing me to that product, and I've been a believer since.
And the one that you specifically like, Meb, if I'm right, is it's the chocolate UCAN with the protein, right? That's pretty much been your go-to and your favorite flavor since you started out with UCAN?
Almost definitely. I think we should probably label this Meb's favorite brand. You know, just like the restaurants have locals favorite and things like that. And the Generation UCAN, my favorite one, I know have a sweet tooth. So the Generation UCAN chocolate flavor is great. And yeah, I really am craving it when I'm doing my cool down, because I can't wait to put my hands on it and, you know, be able to treat myself after a harder earned session. And I have used it to double the pack. You know, if I done like 27, 28 miles, really hard run, or 15-mile hard tempo run, I have used a pack and a half or maybe 2 packs just to get a good dose of protein, and obviously nice sugar and super starch that is able to give me, you know, salivate for it in the cool down. So it's you want to treat your taste.
Now, you know, one of the things you mentioned is like from the recovery aspect with the protein and not feeling the same soreness. But what I think is also really fascinating, and you know, you talked about this already, but that steady energy, that sustained energy after your run. And you mentioned something pretty interesting a few minutes ago, where you were talking about, you know, that you shouldn't be, you don't want to be like totally wiped out for the rest of the day after a difficult workout. How important is, you know, a lot of times people think energy and they think like, hey, I need energy before my workout. But, you know, for you, running it's a full-time deal. It's not just your runs and that's the end of the day, right? So how important is having that energy after your hard training session, just in terms of getting you able to do all the other things you need to do to make yourself the runner that you are?
You know, to answer that question better, probably be my brother and manager Howie, because it's a marathon after another marathon. Because the marathon itself, the running part is one thing, but like you said, it's just the appearance. Is like we didn't get home after the Boston win or New York. Sometimes I'm not in my room till probably 7 or 8 p.m. and it's just going and going and going. But because of the Generation UCAN energy, sustained energy is ongoing, and I'm upbeat, going through the motion. I'm going out in my appearances, and it's fun because people say you must be exhausted, or people think I went to the room, took a shower, and came back, but that's not the case. I've been still making appearances. I'm on the go, but I think is testimony to what you can do to your body, whether it's avoid soreness or giving you energy that is fuel throughout the day, and it's just an amazing product.
And I think that's it. For you, it's a lot of appearances, and for the everyday person, after a hard run or a race, it might not be the appearances, but it's the same kind of concept, right? If you're somebody that's training. And then has to go home and take your kids to school or get to work yourself or prepare dinner for the family or whatever it may be. I mean, everybody is trying to fit their training in around a whole bunch of kind of responsibilities just in their daily life. So that's a way where people can look and say, hey, Meb, for Meb, it sustains him so he can get through his appearances and his press conferences and his elite athlete obligations. But when you're in training, it's not so much about appearances. It's actually about you getting through the realities that you have in your life, just like everybody else has in their own life.
Yeah, most definitely. When I'm done with a race, I have those things that you mentioned, press conference, drug testing, and appearances, and all those things that are going on and on. But also when I'm not, when I'm not racing on a day-to-day basis, or if I'm at home, I pick up my kids, I drop them off at school, and be able to just do interviews, and it's constantly go. I mean, almost every second is calculated until sometimes, it's a full-time job. I tell the Giordano sometimes, I just can't believe it's been on the go since like 7 to 7 p.m. And then now it's time to finally sit down, have dinner with the family and things like that. So, and I'm pretty sure everybody else do the same thing, where they start running at 5:30 in the morning and then, drop the kids off and go to work and do work and then come back and maybe, they have to go to the gym or maybe just prepare dinner, as you alluded to. And we all have busy schedules, but at the same time, the one, exercise is good for you, and two, you need to take care of your body and how to maintain it, because, you don't want to crash. And, that's where Generation UCAN can come in handy and be able to just sustain energy throughout the day. And then if you can do those, it's a good combination of exercise and nutrition, and to be able to do day in, day out, and then you will have successful lifestyle, and you will have, it's kind of almost like a second nature, because you know what works for you. And some people, they need to have other product to keep them up on alert, but this is where you need to do naturally with a super starch and low sugar to be able to just have you go throughout your lifestyle and have a really nice in your system to be able to have no issues. And you don't have to keep taking it just like maybe one in the morning, one night, or whatever it is, or just one throughout the day. That will get you with the snacks and other things, you're good to go.
Now, right now, Meb, you're in a period where I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're giving yourself a chance to recover a little bit and not yet in the meat of your training for the Olympics. Now, you talked about a story back from after winning the New York City Marathon, where when you were traveling and you were doing a lot of appearances, you were kind of using UCAN at different times on the go, even when you weren't in heavy training, especially when you were traveling, just to sustain you. I know you've been doing a ton of appearances even after the Olympic trials. I think the last time I talked to you, you were in Milwaukee. I think you made a trip to Tampa Bay. So how do you find ways to fit UCAN in even outside of training? Is it something that you'll have when you're traveling, just as a something to sustain you when you can't sit down for that proper meal, or how much you use it outside of training?
Also, as a training, sometimes have appearances at 6:30 a.m. to be able to be TV, and so I'd rather just have half of your UCAN, and then the other half throughout the day. And basically, on the travel, sometimes you never know when you're gonna get your next meal, or you're going through airports. You'd rather have something that is really, that you believe in, and you're gonna get a good sustained energy and good product in your system. And if you're gonna be able to buy you maybe 2 more, 3 more hours before the real meal comes, and then have that in your bag, and then be able to just take it out and have water and mix it is pretty easy. And yeah, I've been traveling a lot, and I've been using it on a few occasions as well. When I'm traveling, and sometimes you're in a hotel, and there's the rest, you cannot order the room service because you gotta go and things like that. So it's like UCAN comes in handy, because it's going to give you for 2-3 hours, and then after your appearances, I'm not saying don't have a real meal, but you'll have a real meal afterward when, whether it's with Howie or other people that I have to do business with. So, but in the meantime, I'll have, whether I'm running or not running, I'll have the Generation UCAN to get me go for the next couple hours.
And that's a great point that you said. I think talking about the way you've used it, it's not something that's a substitute for a real meal. It's something that's a bridge to the time where you can have that real meal, and then you sit down for dinner and you're not starving. You're not like, oh, let me eat everything in sight. You're able to make a lot smarter choices. So you're really using it, as a tool to kind of tide you over between one meal to the next meal. And I think that's a great way for people to think about it.
Most definitely. I mean, I think the packet that you showed, I had 2 of those in one serving, or I have 1 of those or half of that, and just keep it, put it in a Ziploc bag, keep that for the next time. So, you want to use it as a, like you said, bridge to be able to say, okay, I'm going to have 3 hours or 4 hours before the next meal. So I'll have that because I got to exercise, or I got to run to something else. Or you want to go to the grocery store, they said, don't ever go to the grocery store hungry. Just have something because otherwise you're going to get everything in the cart. You don't want to do that. So, but if you have like a Generation UCAN or other snacks, you just be able to just put that in your system, and you'll alleviate a little bit of the food that you want to get everything your hands on. So, or, whether you're going for a dinner or things like that, you want to be able to just, have something in your system, because you don't want to go hungry and for a long time. And then, you go to a restaurant, sometimes you got to wait and you got to do that, waiting for other people and things like that. You don't want to start have your body eating your muscles versus, you'd rather just have just something simple, right? Say, what, I'm going to have half of UCAN and go throughout the day. And then when you get there, you're going to have a lot of energy.
And, I think to speak to what Meb was just talking about too, like when we're talking about UCAN, really at a fundamental level, what UCAN is doing is it's keeping your blood sugar steady. And a lot of times when you have those cravings going into a meal, it's because your blood sugar is really low and you haven't eaten in several hours. And that's oftentimes why people are going to feel those cravings or overeat at meals. So really by going into those meals with your blood sugar steady, if you've had UCAN a couple hours before, that's how a lot of people are able to use it as a tool to help them stay fit, to help them stay lean. It's really all coming back to that blood sugar control, which at a very fundamental level, that's what UCAN's offering. Just a couple more for you, Meb. So, a lot of people, it's what I think is so fascinating about all this stuff is that, somebody like yourself who's had great success with UCAN is using it in a certain way. And then there's other folks that are using it more pre-run and not as much post-run, and so it's very versatile in the sense that having that steady blood sugar it can be applicable in so many different situations, and it's just really up to the individual to figure out how it works best for them. Now, for you, it seems like, your workouts in your day is pretty structured when you're in hard training, so you usually have time to wake up in the morning and have a proper breakfast or have some type of meal before you go out and train, whereas for others who aren't doing this at the professional level, they might just get up and have to get out the door 20 or 30 minutes later. And that's where they may opt to say, hey, I can have UCAN before this run instead of eating because it's going to be easy on my stomach. And I don't have, an hour or 2 hours before my run where I have that meal. I know you've used UCAN before your some runs as well. So, and even though that's not the primary way you use it, can you just speak to your experience when you have used UCAN before your runs? How have you used it, and what have you found?
Oh, definitely. I have used the UCAN before. I mean, I used it before Boston 2010. I've used it a few other times during, before a run. And it just, 45 minutes, you have to experiment with it. Is it 45 minutes before a run that works for you, or 30 minutes, or an hour before? So like I say, everybody's different in those kind of regards. So, and for me, I have used it, for the Boston, like a couple hours before, whereas, if I'm in a rush and say, I cannot have a toast or something, then just say 30 minutes before, let me just have half of the Generation UCAN packet before a run, and worked out really fine because you get that, energy that what you're looking for, and that's what it's sustained energy, and you want to be able, it doesn't upset my stomach. And so you have to try each individual what works best for them, and then you'll be able to say, hey, I really like the one beforehand and use that for beforehand, but for me, the one I have really enjoyed is more for afterward and recovery, and be able to just go throughout my day seamless because of the energy after, I'm not saying take it easy in your training, push as hard as you can, but at the same time, never go overboard. But at the same time, I'll have Generation UCAN immediately, and I'm couple minutes later, or 3 minutes later, or 20 minutes later, I'm back to my normal routine, and the next day I'm not sore or anything.
And what I like to hear so much about Meb's story too is that what that sustained energy aspect of UCAN, it's interesting because it really applies whether you're talking before your run or after your run. Having that steady and that sustained long-lasting energy, it's applicable in so many different situations. So it's really interesting to hear Meb talk about it. Meb, one more on the nutrition, and then I'll close it with a final question that's outside of nutrition. When you think about your nutrition on race day versus your nutrition and training, I know so many people are kind of, it becomes obsessive, like what should I use during the race, what should I use during the race? But I don't know if there's a percentage you can put on it or how much thought you devote to it, but do you spend a lot more time preparing and planning, and do you feel that one is more important than the other when it comes to like your overall fueling versus just thinking about what am I going to have during the race?
Not a whole lot. I mean, preparation is the key to success. And in training, the month is, so whether it's 3 months or 4 months you get ready for, and how you get ready is the most important thing. And for me, like I alluded to earlier, and Generation UCAN becomes very critical as soon as I start getting trained hard. And even though when I use the one in travel, that's kind of like wishy-washy a little bit. Sometimes you use it, sometimes you don't. But and then when it comes to regiment, just getting ready for the training, then I definitely rely on Generation UCAN to be able to help me get consistent training, consistent energy, and day in, day out. And if you can do that a block of month of training, then the work is done. Get into the starting line. It's going to be a test whether you're going to pass or not. But other than that, it's just, the hard work is done. Now it's mental game. And honestly, sometimes you go into the races. Some races don't have Generation UCAN on the course. So what are you going to do? But you use whatever you can to help you be the best on that day. But for some, it is. I'm there for 2 hours, 2 hours and 15 minutes, and I try to execute my plan the best that I can, and and I have used the power bar gels in there because we get the special bottles and things like that, and be able to go consistently on that. And then also afterward, it's like, okay, time to as soon as they step down for the finish line, is you gotta react quickly. The first thing I want to do is water and Generation UCAN, and then just because now you have to think about recovery, whether it's for the next race, whether it was 10K race or 7-mile race or half marathon or full marathon, doesn't change. You have to have, for me, I have to have Generation UCAN. I always is in my pack, and then get ready again. So for the 3 months or for 4 months that you're preparing for, those are essential. And it's not just on race day. So you have to be able to do the month of training and try it out. The Generation UCAN, they have different flavors, and in your training and your regimen, and whether it's before, during, or after, and whatever works for you. And keep on doing it for the months of leading into it, and then the race day, you've done the work. Now you just gotta go out there and perform and pass the test.
And Meb, I think if anybody has credibility saying it's about what you're doing in your training to stay consistent, I think you're a guy that's lived it, and so I think that's a great takeaway. That it's really as much as we think about the race day and get nervous about what should we do on race day, that's absolutely a part of it. But if you can do the right things like you talked about for several months stacked in training, then the race is almost going to take care of itself. You've already done the work. You've got to the starting line fit, and you just need to kind of execute the plan. So Meb, one last thing I did want to ask you is, I don't know that you're thinking about what's next, because you've got a very big summer coming up for you now, headed to Rio to compete in the Olympics in August. But as you sit here, you've made it for your 4th Olympic team. You've accomplished so much in the sport: Olympic silver medalist, New York City Marathon winner, Boston Marathon winner, the only human to do all three. So I'm very excited to be chatting with the only person to do all three of those things. Have you had a chance to just reflect on your running career overall? And have you had a chance to sit back and really appreciate what you've accomplished, or will that time come, after Rio. How do you do that? Do you ever give yourself a chance to just sit back and reflect?
No, I don't do that. But sometimes there's a lot of people in the world, and to say that you're the only one that has those kind of accolades, it does feel good. And it's been my goal to be able to get a medal for our country, or in New York or Boston. And sometimes I'm on the plane when I won the silver medal. You're on a plane and landing to New York, and it's like there's a lot of buildings, a lot of people, and I'm probably the only one that has a medal and going to that land, So those things kind of comes on and off at times, and then think about Boston, and then the New York win and things like that. So, Rio is gonna be very exciting. Obviously, I don't want to get too excited because the race not until August, but definitely feel big weight off my shoulder, just because I do put a lot of pressure on myself to make it for myself, for our country, and for my daughters. And I'm glad it's behind me, and now I just got to execute my good training plans and try to execute a good race in Rio. And whatever happens, my legacy or my career has been already determined of what I have accomplished. And I've been saying that for a couple of years now. It's a bonus how good the frosting going to be, but the frost just getting better and better and thicker. So I just feel blessed to have those accolades, and but hopefully my thing is to interact with people. I've been enjoying doing that process. Yeah, sometimes you look what I have accomplished, but also how many people are participating in the sport, and you want to be able to help them be the best they can be. Whether it's, it was very fascinating news when I was in Tampa, Florida. Not news, but somebody I interact with people, whether I'm in the crowd or on the stage, or I'm just running by myself. I just give them thumbs up or I say, nice job. And this lady comes up, she goes, were you running in Brandon like 2005, 2006, when I was still going back and forth with Jordanos? And she goes, I said, yeah, my girlfriend at the time, my wife was, Jordanos was living in there. So it's like, that was the first time after my heart surgery, I was walking. She wasn't running, she was walking, and he told me thumbs up. I said, good job. And you never know who you're gonna touch people. So I've been very fortunate to touch people in many ways than I can ever explain. And, just give them a pat on the back and say, good job for finishing 13 miles or 13.1 or a marathon, and interact with them. And that has been very rewarding for me, and I enjoy it. And then, you never know who you're gonna come across. Just treat others with respect and dignity and have fun in the process. And now I'm excited to go to Rio and hopefully have a good show in there. And, I know the end of my competitive career is near, but hopefully I can still be in the sport and interacting with my fellow runners and enjoy the process of helping them achieve their goals, or whether nutritionally training and, recovery and strengthening and all those things that I talk about in my book. And, I love interacting with people. Hopefully they feel the same way. I want to make sure they have a positive experience with me. That's important to me.
Well, man, that's a great story to end us on. I think hearing that story, it's no doubt why that you are America's favorite marathoner, and we really appreciate you taking the time with us. And just a couple things that you mentioned, but I'll emphasize again, if you do want to find out more about Meb's story, I strongly encourage you all to read Run to Overcome. It's just a terrific book, and really details Meb's journey to the United States and his journey coming up as a professional runner. And actually, I think you had a new edition of the book that was re-released after you won Boston. Is that right? So yeah,
Right.
Definitely encourage you to check that out. And then more recently, Meb for Mortals. It's kind of similar to what we're talking about here today. It's really how to be like Meb. I think so many of us, you might look at Meb and say, I'm not that good of a runner. What can I take away from him? But I think what's so fascinating, especially as Meb's continued his success over the last 5 or 6 years, as he's gotten a little more advanced in age. I think a lot of what the tactics he's been employing now, and we've talked a lot about the fueling part of it and the UCAN part of it here today, but a lot of the other things in terms of drills and different exercises Meb's done, you can really get great insight into what he's done and how specifically you can use some of those tactics in your own running. So definitely check out Run to Overcome and Meb for Mortals. And Meb, I just want to say thank you. It's always fun to do this with you. Great to see you in LA, and look forward to catching up again soon. But thanks so much for sharing some time and spending some time with us today.
My pleasure. It's always fun to chat with you, Varun. And, whenever I ran a marathon, it's a reset button for me. People see you go like blazing fast for 26.2 or 13.1 miles, but we all start somewhere. And if you've never done a marathon, you should do one in your lifetime. And for me, even now that I'm getting started, I ran 4 miles. I'm celebrating because, it hurts. It's an evaluation, and things like that. But there's a goal to work for. And, champions or training doesn't happen overnight. And we're not born like that. But if we work hard and set goals, great things can wait ahead of us, and we can achieve them if we are determined to do daily tasks.
Well, wise words from Meb. We'll end it there. So for Meb Keflezighi, I'm Varun Sriram with UCAN. Everybody who signed up will be getting a full recording of this by email, so you guys can rewatch this if you were only able to join us for some of it or couldn't join us live. You can learn more about Meb at his website, marathonmeb.com, and you can check us out at generationucan.com if you want to try one of the secrets to Meb's success. Meb, thanks again. Enjoy sunny San Diego, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.